Good morning. Welcome in to an edition of Keene on Sports with a returning guest, Fernando. How are we doing?
I'm doing great. Enjoying World Cup. A lot. We've seen some things happen around the NBA, but let's talk. We're going to talk about. So I'm really excited to talk about them with you.
Yeah, man, we got a lot to get to today. We're gonna do it a little differently. Start with the NBA. We got some major news with the trades. LaMelo Ball going to the Wolves. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about some other NBA offseason potential moves surrounding Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard, some other stars in the NBA. Then we'll move on to the World Cup, the greatest tournament in the world. We'll talk a little bit about Haaland, Mbappe, that prime time match at 3 o'clock between two arguably greatest young scorers right now in our game. And then we'll talk about the hosts again. We'll talk about the U.S. concerning. Is it concerning their loss against Turkey yesterday? We'll talk about Canada and their loss to Switzerland, and then we'll wrap up with your home team, Mexico. Talk about how they performed and how they got a huge win and finished the group stage with a perfect 9 points, something a lot of teams weren't able to do. So let's get started with the NBA. We'll talk about LaMelo Ball. He was traded to the Timberwolves. Huge haul. You're talking first round pick, three first round pick swaps, three second round picks, and then Naz Reid, who I think is an underrated player in the league. So first, Fernando, I want to get your thoughts on what you thought about the deal. Who do you think won the trade, and how does this sort of work out for the Hornets and the Timberwolves?
Yeah, I mean, this was a shocker because I did not expect the Hornets to move on from Lamelo this quickly, especially coming off a season from the Hornets that was one of their greatest in a long time, even though they didn't make the postseason. Um, for me, I see it this way with the trade. I see it as a risk reward trade. There's a lot of risks and there's a lot of reward potentially for for the Timberwolves. The reward is you get a really young guard in LaMelo Ball who's coming off his best season. He led the Hornets to the last playing game before they fell short against the Magic. He was almost he was an all-star. He did great this season. So he's coming off his greatest season in the NBA. But here's the risk. The guy isn't healthy. This is the first time we've seen him play more than 70 games. Before that, he hadn't played more than 70 games. So he's not a guy you can depend on to be healthy. So there's the risk. And you don't know how LaMelo and Anthony Edwards are going to work out because both of them need the ball. Both like to have the ball, set the pace, set the tempo on the offense. So it's going to be someone's going to have to sacrifice having the ball, and that's where the risk comes in. But the reward is if you find a way to get both players on the same page, and someone is willing to sacrifice having the ball. There's a lot. The Hornets have one of the best guard combos in all of the NBA. So I see it that way. But if I had to choose who won it, I think I actually had to take the Hornets because you got a lot of picks. You got Nas Reed, and at the end of the day, you're coming off a season where you were not expected to make it to the play-in or even have a chance to make the playoffs, and you exceeded expectations, and you have a lot of good players on that Hornets team. So getting rid of LaMelo Ball is going to suck for Hornets fans right now. I understand it, but getting a lot back in first rounders, Nas Reed, you mentioned it. He is a really good player. He's one of those six. He was one of six man of the year candidates. Really good player, and for me, the Hornets got what they needed, and I think Timberwolves are risking a lot with LaMelo and Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I think there's two ways to look at it. I'm going to start with the Hornets side of things. I think the Hornets got a huge haul for him, and I like the deal for them. You watched what they did this past season. Obviously, they got up to a slow start, and then they just turned on the Jets, and they were absolutely one of the best teams in the NBA towards the end of the season. And LaMelo, people talk about LaMelo Ball. Yeah, he's a star. He has some great moments. He has some not so great moments, but his value towards the end of not this past season, but the year before, it wasn't that high, right? If you were going to trade LaMelo, you weren't going to get as much for him. But after coming off this season where he had a great year, the Hornets seemed to have a lot of success. They found some rhythm. They got a huge haul for him. And so the Hornets, I like the deal in the aspect that you have someone who I think is super undervalued in Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller has superstar potential. Great shooter, super athletic, can play some defense, can get to the basket. And I think Brandon Miller is sort of a piece that they can build around. And I also like the idea of having Kobe White now step into a larger role. I think they made this deal thinking, okay, we don't have to pay Kobe White as much as LaMelo. Kobe White, is he as good of a passer as LaMelo? No. But he can score the basketball, he can shoot at a high clip, and Kobe White is someone who could step into that role and be successful. So I kind of like it from the Hornets aspect, and I think Yeah, you're losing LaMelo Ball, an all-star caliber player, but I think they get better in that, LaMelo had some poor shot selection, and right now shots are sort
Mm,
of getting spread out to guys like Brandon Miller who can be successful and Con Kneppel and Miles Bridges. Like there's a lot of guys on that team who can take more shots now than LaMelo's not there. In the Timberwolves aspect of things, like you kind of talked about, yeah, there's two guys who are ball dominant for the most part. Anthony Edwards, sort of a shooting guard, plays off the ball, but also loves to get to his spots, and that requires him having the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how they work that out. But the one thing I do like is that the Timberwolves haven't had a point guard like a Melo Ball in this Anthony Edwards era. You're talking about Mike Conley, right? He was older, right? He just never had the legs under him to be, a threat to score 20, 25 a night, right? It just didn't happen at this point in his career. On top of that, they haven't had anyone else be able to come in there and have a ton of success in that position. DiVincenzo sort of runs the point guard for them, but he's not really a true point guard. Now they have a true point guard. And you have Gobert, who's sort of a lob threat. You have Anthony Edwards, who's quite frankly a lob threat even as a guard. Now you have Jaden McDaniels. I hate the loss of Naz Reid. I think Naz Reid's a great player and he's going to fit in really well with the Hornets. But I think LaMelo Ball now gives him a different angle, a different perspective on the offense. I think now he can dish the ball. He can take some good shots. I hope that he kind of grows into a winner. I don't see LaMelo Ball right now as a championship level player. I don't think he's mature enough. I don't think he takes responsible looks, and I think sometimes he takes the game too lightly. Right in big moments, I remember
mhm.
watching last year. He takes a poor shot. He'll pull up from deep, and in a 3-point game, he doesn't need to take a deep three. Right, get somebody else the ball, get him a good look, or get yourself a better look. So I think I'm interested to see the growth of LaMelo Ball. But I think Anthony Edwards has to be happy with this. And what do you think now that they have LaMelo? What do you think the ceiling is for the Timberwolves? Because you have a good team now. You have a good starting five. Yeah, you lost Nas Reed, but you have LaMelo in there. And obviously, Jaden McDaniels just keeps getting better. And you still have Rudy Gobert, a great defensive player. What is the ceiling? Can they compete with the likes of the Oklahoma City Thunder or the San Antonio Spurs?
No, I don't think they can compete against the Thunder and the Spurs. I think those two teams are by far the best teams in the West. I think you to beat one of those two teams, you need size, and that's why I think giving up Nas Reed was it's a big loss because he was a guy who has size on Wemby, Chet, and like those guys. That's a player that you need to compete against the Thunder and the Horn and the Spurs. So that's a big loss. And yes, you might have the one of the best starting threes in the NBA, starting fives in the NBA, and also guard combos. But I still think losing that size is a big loss. And then for me, I just think there's a lot of problems on the Hornets right now that I just don't see them making it past. I think their ceiling is Western Conference Final, but if they can find size in the offseason, maybe that could change. But for me, still the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Spurs as the favorites in the West.
I agree. I agree. It's interesting. They also signed Ayo DeSumo to a huge contract, which obviously he had a good end of the year. It's a lot of money you're tying up to Ayo DeSumo, but you have to invest in these players to believe it, so they have belief in themselves that they can become superstars. But
Mm.
I think the Timberwolves have athleticism, and I was watching some film the other day, and they're talking about, it's going to be hard to beat the Spurs just purely based on, on trying to get bigger than them, because the Spurs, there's no way to get bigger than Wembanyama. Let's just be honest.
Yeah,
So the way to maybe combat that is to be athletic, right? Have people who can play athletically, get downhill, can keep the Spurs on their toes, keep Wemby off balance. And I think Timberwolves are sort of taking that approach here. LaMelo, Anthony Edwards, Ayo DeSumo, Jaden McDaniels, DiVincenzo, Bones Highland. There's a bunch of guys on that team who are shifty, can get downhill, can create their own shot. So maybe the way to beat the Spurs or to beat the Thunder, who have Mara and Hardenstein and a whole bunch of guys, is to be more athletic than them. Not necessarily
yeah.
try to get bigger or out physical them, but to become more athletic.
Yeah,
And
exactly. That's what we saw in the NBA Finals. I mean, we saw
yeah,
Carl Anthony Towns wear down Wemby, and we saw Wemby for the first time ever get frustrated, and that's why at the end of the day, the
yeah,
Knicks won the final. So that's the thing.
yeah,
You need to be if you want to compete against the Spurs and the Thunder, you have to be big, and
yeah.
that's why I think at the end of the day the Wolves lost that trade because you lost some big men that gave you a chance to compete against those two teams.
Yeah, I think it's you got to find a balance, right? You want to be big, but at the same time be athletic, so that Wemby, part of the reason I think Anthony Towns had success was because he was able to be a threat from the outside. Just the idea that Anthony Towns can knock down the three, like Wemby had to come away from the basket. Timberwolves don't really have that with Rudy Gobert. Nas Reed is one of those guys who can kind of play a small five and you can kind of pull Wemby away from the basket because Reed will shoot those threes and he'll shoot them and make them. So, I think it's interesting. Also, getting rid of Julius Randle now, Yeah,
Yeah,
there's definitely a lack of size. The Randall and the Nas Reed loss, like that's something you're gonna have to make up. And I'm interested to see what they do in free agency because I think you have to sign someone to play that for. Because I line up with Edwards, Dusumu, and LaMelo Ball. And yeah, you have Jaden McDaniels, you have Rudy Gobert, but McDaniels is not. I think he's a good 6'8", and Rudy Gobert again is a big, but he can't shoot, right? So you got
yeah.
to find some way to become dangerous at the five, so you can pull a guy like Wemby away from the basket. And I think that's something they're going to have to address. And even if it's just getting a guy like Nikola Vucevic, right, someone to put on the bench who can just pull Wemby away from the basket a little bit, right, keep him honest. Because if you just let him sit in the paint like he would against Gobert, right, I mean, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
So the Bulls definitely have stuff to fix. In terms of the Hornets aspect of things, just to close this kind of conversation out, what do you think their ceiling is next season? Obviously, getting the middle ball, you think initially they might get worse, but I think some could argue they get better. They came off a huge, really, really positive season. Even though they didn't get in the playoffs, they had a great finish. Now they have Kobe White. They locked him up. They have Brandon Miller, Miles Bridges. They have a whole bunch of guys off the bench. Con Canepa was a great rookie. So what do you think their ceiling is next season?
I think their ceiling is the same as last year. I think I think they'll make the play in, but I don't know if they'll
Yeah.
make the playoffs because at the end of the day, we saw the East get better during the draft and right now and during the offseason. The Celtics are still good. Knicks are still good. Sixers are actually Knicks. So Sixers are still going to be good. We saw Toronto get better this year. We saw we saw Cleveland Cavaliers make it to the conference finals. We saw the Pistons who made it to the number one seed. I mean, like there's a lot of the Wizards got better. Like there's a lot of good teams in the East now, and the Heat
Yeah.
we can't the Heat now are in the conversation. So like that's the thing. Like
Yeah.
there's so many good teams in the East now that I just don't see the Hornets making the playoffs right now with the team that's currently constructed because
Yeah.
there's not that much experience on the team. And then at the end of the day, like they need to get younger and they need to get those reps in. So at the end of the day, I still think their ceiling is playing, but not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think their ceiling is going to be around that 7-8 seed. And I think I think they get in the play and maybe they
Mhm.
mess around to win a playing game. Maybe they sneak in a seed in the playoffs, but I don't see them really winning a playoff series yet. They're super young though. So I think this is just a step in the right direction for the Hornets. Someone else I want to talk about, there's a couple different stars who could possibly be on the move. You talk about Jalen Brown, talk about Kawhi Leonard. There's some reports that he might go back to Toronto. If that's something Toronto's interested in doing.
Mhm.
But the one star that people kind of forget about because he's older now and he's in his 40s and people just sort of sleep on LeBron James. LeBron James is in an interesting situation. The Lakers just signed Austin Reeves to a huge extension, 4-year deal. Luca and Reeves are going to be the core of that Lakers team. They're going to have to find some defensive players to put around them because let's be honest, those two are cones and you could beat them pretty easily off the dribble. So, question is now, what do the Lakers do with LeBron James? Does LeBron resign? Should the Lakers want him back, or should he go somewhere like Cleveland, right, where he's regarded as by everyone there as the greatest player of all time? He's essentially their hero, won a championship for them, and I think it would be interesting to see that them get reunited, especially with James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley. I know there's talks that the Lakers would be interested in doing a Jarrett Allen for LeBron James swap. So, what are your thoughts on the LeBron situation? Should he want to return to LA, or would a situation like Cleveland be better for him if he's trying to get that fifth title?
I'll look at it this way with LeBron. If you want to win, you need to go. You should go to Cleveland because the Lakers currently constructed right now
Yeah,
are not going to win a championship anytime soon. They're making sure they build for the future for Luka Doncic because that's a team
yeah,
that's wants to build the team around Luka and make sure that they get championships with Luka. They don't care. The Lakers don't care about LeBron anymore. They only care about Luka, making sure he's happy and that he's willing to stay for with the Lakers for the rest of his life. So that's what their number one priority is. And I think LeBron needs to understand that that's not the Lakers are not his team anymore. That's Luka's team. So
yeah,
if I'm LeBron, like if you want to win one more championship, your best bet is going to Cleveland because the Cavaliers made it to the conference finals this year before falling to the Knicks in a sweep. And if you go to Cleveland, you actually make the Cleveland Cavaliers a better team because you actually give them size that they need to actually go far in the playoffs because that's what they were lacking in the playoff against the Knicks this year. Because I think that's what we learned a lot during the playoffs this year. Like you need size to compete against teams like the Spurs, the Knicks, the Thunder. Like,
yeah,
and that's what I think LeBron gives to the Cavaliers if he goes there. And that's what I think the Cavs need to do. I think they need to go for LeBron, give him that one last goodbye because I think this will be his last season. So if I were LeBron, go to Cleveland to have one more shot at the championship. But this is the thing. I think LeBron, I've learned from my time, is a family man. And I don't think and I think also he cares a lot about playing with Bronny. And I don't think Bronny is gonna want to leave LA. And that's where it gets really messy for LeBron. Do you want to you're choosing your family or winning? And that's one of the things that he's gonna have to decide. And knowing and based on what I've seen with LeBron, I think he's gonna prioritize his family. And that's why I think he's gonna end his career with the Lakers because at the end of the day, he's gonna prioritize family over winning.
That's an interesting thing I didn't even think about. Honestly, I was thinking about all the different things, but I did not think about the Bronny aspect of things. And it sort of feels like one of those like Giannis Thanasis sort of situations, right? Where Thanasis is only on the team because Giannis is there. The question is, if LeBron was to leave LA and Bronny wasn't following, would Bronny still have a spot on the Lakers? You would have to think probably not, right? I mean, you think that
Yeah,
Bronny's a good player. Is he young? And yes, does he deserve to be in maybe the high G League and be one of the top players in the G League, or just on low you know on the roster but low on the bench on terms of a worst team? Probably, right? Probably deserves that. But you're right. I think there's an interesting aspect into like, does LeBron think that Bronny is better off in LA? Does he worry that if he leaves, Bronny will not have a roster spot anymore? And because again, you can't really force a team to have your son once you're not on it. Like if he's in LA, the Lakers had some pressure to draft Bronny. They wanted to keep LeBron happy, but they're not going to care about keeping LeBron happy once he's gone. So the other question is, if he goes to Cleveland, would Cleveland accept taking Bronny and having him fill a roster spot? I mean, potentially.
probably
I
not.
think.
Probably I don't think
I mean,
so.
I don't know. It depends on what their roster looks like. Is there somewhere where some agreement where he could be a two-way player, right? So essentially, what he was on the Lakers,
Mhm.
a G League guy and an NBA guy. I mean, I think that's a possibility. Now, again, we don't know for sure. We don't know where LeBron's going, but I think I agree with you in that if LeBron wants to win a fifth title, Cleveland is the place to go. I really believe that, and I think it's because Cleveland needs a sense of maturity and someone with sort of a playoff experience that supersedes what Donovan Mitchell has. Because again, people want to complain about all these players who don't show up in the playoffs, and Donovan Mitchell is one of those guys. Like you can say, oh, Donovan Mitchell, he's had some success, but he really hasn't. He was the number one seed with the Utah Jazz for years in the West. Never got out of the second round. This was the first year he'd ever advanced past the second round, and then he got swept in the conference finals. So I think Donovan Mitchell, in a squad with him and James Harden, Evan Mobley, like there's a lack of championship pedigree. And LeBron James brings that championship pedigree. And I think if you're trying to win a final championship, the Eastern Conference is the place to go. And the Cleveland Cavaliers give you a chance to do that. And again, they were in the Eastern Conference Finals. So there's not that many teams ahead of the Cavaliers in terms of where they are in trying to reach championship. The Knicks won one. Okay, they're ahead of you. You talk about the Celtics, maybe. Sixers, maybe. We just don't know yet. So I think the Cavs would be a great spot for LeBron, and I think that's something that Cleveland should be interested in doing. And I think the swap for Jarrett Allen and LeBron James makes sense for both sides. Does it not?
I do. I think the if you want to get because I do think that we do need a better center. I don't think DeAndre in is a guy you can depend on
Yeah.
to make a difference on a playoff team. I mean, he's a guy.
Yeah.
I think the best example of DeAndre is actually Peterson, who was drafted by the Utah Jazz last year. He's a guy who can one night give you 20 points and 10 rebounds per game, and then one day he can look like the worst player on the court. So that's the thing. You don't know what to expect with DeAndre Ayton. So I don't want to trust that guy on the Lakers. That's why I'd rather have a Jared Allen who actually has proven that he can give you his best, averages a double double, has been an all star. So I'd rather to do that than keep depending on DeAndre Ayton. And this is the other thing I wanted to mention about the Cavaliers. We also getting LeBron gives them a sense of leadership that they desperately need because in that conference finals against the Celtics, you could tell that they were struggling with leadership. Like there were times where I think LeBron could have been very useful when, for example, in game one where they blew that big fourth quarter lead. I think leadership like LeBron's could have been very useful in that moment. And that's why I think LeBron also could be
Yeah.
very useful to the Cavaliers because in moments of when the team is down and out and then they're struggling, LeBron is the one who can bring that leadership to the team and motivate and rally the team. So that's where I think LeBron also comes in very handy for this team.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. I think this fit makes sense. Does it happen? It seems like it's one of those things where it's too perfect, right? It just seems like it's too perfect of a situation. It's too storybook of an ending that it would actually happen. But I do think that this would be a perfect situation for both LeBron, for Cleveland, and I think ultimately for LA. If you're able to get a guy like Jarrett Allen in a sign and trade, I think that increases your chances of winning a championship because you get sides that compete in the West. And now you have Luca, you have AR, you have Jarrett Allen, and then obviously if DeAndre Ayton was happy coming off the bench, he's not a bad bench center at all. Like I think that's something. But now whether he I know he'll accept that role and play hard off the bench. I mean, I have my doubts about that, but we'll
Me
see.
too.
Another free agent, well, not free agent, but someone to keep an eye on: Jaylen Brown, Kawhi Leonard. Who do you think would be more likely to be moved? Because obviously Jaylen Brown now is taking a lot of offers. The Celtics are listening to people, whether it's the Hornets, the Pistons. There's a lot of teams in the West, according to other analysts on ESPN, that are interested in this deal. And then obviously Kawhi Leonard, someone the Clippers are sort of in a middle ground in terms of they're not good enough to win a championship, but they're also not bad enough to go. I guess now with the different rules with tanking, you can't really tank and get the first overall pick, but they're not bad enough to miss the playoffs for the most part in terms of where their roster is at. What do you think? Who do you think gets moved? Is it Kawhi or is it Jaylen Brown? Who's more likely to find themselves in a new place next season?
It's got for me. It's got to be Jalen Brown. I think we saw what happened with the Giannis situation. The Celtics were literally willing to give him up for for Giannis and two first rounders. So I mean, at the end of the day, like that's you. If I'm Jalen Brown, you already know all knowing what happened with the Giannis deal that they don't want you
Yeah,
anymore. So I think, and also I think the Celtics. I saw this before we went on today. The Celtics are still taking calls for Jalen Brown right now. So
yeah,
I think I think from that we were learning that the Celtics really do want to move on from him and build a team all around Jason Tatum, and because also they're getting young, so they want to get more draft picks, more younger players. So that's why I think we're learning right now. Like either they want a veteran who, like a Giannis, they want a big guy who can help them reach that next level in championship, or they're willing to start rebuilding around Jason Tatum. So they have two directions to go in. That's why I think Jalen Brown is the key piece. You can choose what direction you can go in with trading Jalen Brown. And I think that's why I think at the end of the day, I think the Celtics will get rid of him because I think I think that's gonna I think the fact that you already wanted to trade him to get Giannis is already damages
yeah,
your relationship with the team. So and Kawhi Leonard, like we don't hear much about what's going on with him. And also like there were been rumors for a long time that he might leave Cleveland, that he might leave the Clippers. And then
yeah,
also he's a weird guy. Like we when he was signed with the Clippers, we didn't even know what he was gonna do. We were following where he was going. He was going to Toronto, the Lakers. Like it was such a
yeah,
messy situation. We don't know what this guy is gonna ever do. So
yeah.
for me, it's gotta be Jalen Brown.
I agree. I agree. I think Jaylen Brown makes more sense. I think the Celtics are probably going to end up moving him because it's one of those situations where it's the relationship has been damaged because you keep putting him up for sale, and someone like Jaylen Brown's going to want to feel valued, especially when he was a top 5 or 6 MVP candidate last season. He wants to feel valued. He wants to feel like a number one option, and he wants to feel wanted. And I don't think he feels that with Boston. So I think ultimately, I'm not sure where he's going to go, but apparently the asking price is 4 first round picks, which is that's a
A
lot of
lot.
picks. And I
That's a
don't
lot.
know if I would do that as a general manager. I think four is a lot. I mean, if you were to tell me, maybe 3 first round picks or 2 first round picks and a pick swap and plus a player or two, then I would probably do that. But 4 first round picks seems like a really steep price. But we'll see. I mean, again, when you're trying to win a championship, a lot of teams will get desperate. They'll make a move like that. And who knows? Maybe a Houston, maybe a team out west decides, look, we need someone to be able to bolster our chances to go get the Spurs and Thunder and beat them to get to the finals. And I think the Timberwolves, another option, like maybe they decide to trade away one of their younger stars like Jaden McDaniels and trade up to go get Jalen Brown. I'm not sure if that works better for them. But again, you have to all options are on the table when you're trying to win a championship. So I think it's interesting to see. Moving on, the World Cup. We have a great day of games. Before we get to today's games, we'll recap the last couple of days. Morocco, big win, 4-2 against Haiti, even though they trailed twice in that game, which turned out to be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Brazil beating Scotland. Neymar made his return to the World Cup. It was just great to see. You saw the emotion on his face, the tears. It's just, the World Cup means so much to some of these guys. It was great to see that. Mexico, 3-0 win against Czechia. Canada lost 2-1 against Switzerland. And Last night, the U.S. lost 3-2 against Turkey. Obviously, U.S. subbed out, I believe it was 9 out of their 11 guys, so 9 new starters in that game. So really didn't mean that much to them, but still, you lost. So I want to ask you first, before we get to Mexico and Canada here, how concerning was the U.S. loss? Is this a bad game or is it a bad sign moving forward?
This is a really hard question because you can look at it in so many ways. I mean, it's a loss is a loss. So you want to go into the knockout stage with momentum, and I think the USA lost that momentum losing to Turkey, especially the way they did because that goal,
Yeah,
they lost in the last minute. So that actually can meant that could actually be bad mentally for your that could be bad mentally. But at the end of the day, like, this game didn't matter to them. Like they already had everything secure. They won the group, they got first place. Like they did everything they had to do before that game even started. So I understand Mauricio Pochettino making 9 changes to the starting lineup. But the thing for me is I I don't understand that. I don't understand why he did that. I understand that you did everything you had to do before that game started. But the thing is, it's going to be almost 2 weeks be, between the Australia game to the game against Bosnia. And this is the thing you can't forget. 2 weeks is a lot. You gotta make sure your players have rhythm. They get and be rusty. They have to keep playing, and that's why I think I have to give a lot of criticism to Pochettino. You cannot. I understand you don't want to get the guys yellow cards. You don't want to get them hurt. I understand all of that, but you have to keep them in rhythm. You have to keep them playing because the last thing you want is to have
yeah,
those players not be in rhythm going into the knockouts, and then that rust can kick in against a team like Bosnia where it's a winner take all. So for me, that's very confusing. I don't understand. I would have maybe made
yeah,
5 changes instead of 9.
yeah,
And then also, like for me, I don't understand why you put Matt Turner in for me as a goal when you're a goalie, like you have to if your starter is definitely Matt Freeze, you have to keep him playing because at the end of the day, like I said, it's gonna be 2 weeks before it's almost gonna be 2 weeks between the Australia game and the Bosnia game. So you gotta keep them in rhythm. You gotta make sure he gets those reps in. And now it's gonna be if Matt Freeze really starts this game, it's gonna be 2 weeks, and that's gonna be bad for a goalie. Like you have to keep him in rhythm.
yeah.
So I think that's what Pochettino did was very confusing. I understand the logic between it, but I just think it's not a very smart move. Like you have to keep those players in rhythm. You have to keep them. You can't let them be rusty. So
Yeah.
it is not concerning that they lost, but it's very concerning the way it happened because you have to if you're because you have to make sure that your starters are in rhythm, and that's not what happened last night.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of questions to be asked. I do think 9 different starters is too much turnover, and you're right. It's a big gap between their second group stage game to where then they play Bosnia. Thing is, I also, you asked an interesting question about the Matt Turner aspect of it. I don't really understand why you would take out your goalie out of all, because again, a goalie is not really let's be honest, not a very physical, fitness position, right? Like you're in goal, and it's better to see shots than not to see shots. So it makes sense for me to start your keeper who you started for the first 2 games, and then again, if you want to put Turner in there, then start freeze for I don't know, 60 minutes, 70 minutes, then put Turner in for
Exactly.
the last 20 minutes. That makes more sense. But to
I
go
agree.
Turner the whole game, right? It makes no sense to me. And on top of that, yeah, you're right. Like you have to worry about rust. Is it a concerning loss? No, because it didn't make a difference. But there's just again having momentum, having a rhythm in the World Cup is so important, especially now you're going to a winner take all game against Bosnia. And Bosnia, again, they're not going to roll over. Bosnia is a decent team. Are they Spain? No. Are they Argentina? No. But they just beat Qatar 3-1 and they have some players. They have some good talent on that team. So again, I think you're right. I don't agree with all the roster decisions. I don't agree with the starting 11. I should have
Mhm.
sat 4 guys on yellows. That made sense to me. Don't have risk having them pick up yellow cards. That makes no sense. But the other guys did not need rest. There were a couple guys that did not need that could have played this game and played at least 45 minutes, then take them out. But to not play them at all and to play all your bench guys, it didn't really make sense to me. And now you lose you don't lose the group, but you lose this game. You kind of lose some of the momentum you had and the feeling like, man, we're unbeatable, right? Like now you've suffered your first loss. Maybe it serves as a wake up call. Maybe this helps them move forward. But I agree. I think they should have played some of their starters and not went this route. Before we get to Mexico, because they had a great game against Czechia, Canada, another host nation here. They lost 2-1 against Switzerland. They played most of their starters. Look, they went down 2-0. They lost the group. and it wasn't. I mean, they're going to advance, but again, and they play South Africa, which is should be a win for Canada. But
Mm.
what are your thoughts on that game? Is this concerning for Canada? I mean, is Switzerland a team where you lost to them? Switzerland's a really good team, or should Canada have been won this game, or should it have at least been a draw? And this is a very disappointing result.
No, no, I think what happened in this game was should have what expect was expected to happen. I think Switzerland was the better team. I mean, I know you're playing on home soil, but I think Switzerland have just been proven as a really good team in the World Cup, Euros, major tournaments. They've always shown up in those big moments, and after the Bosnia game, you could tell that that's a team that was in better rhythm after tying against Qatar. So, and Switzerland has
Yeah.
better players at the end of the day over Canada. So I don't think this was a shocking loss. But I think at the end of the day, Canada got very. At the end of the day, Canada didn't lose anything because now you get to play South Africa. Yes, I understand you're not playing on home soil anymore, but now you're playing against a
Yeah.
South Africa team that, in my
Yeah.
opinion, got very lucky to get into the knockout rounds. So
Oh, for
it's
sure.
not. So at the end of the day, like Canada might have lost, but they got a very happy draw in the knockout rounds.
Yeah, I will say I'm very confused with how you're a host nation. You're playing on not on your own soil. I don't think that makes any sense, to be honest with you. I think as a host nation, you've earned the right to play on your home soil throughout the tournament as long as you're in it. So I think that's another conversation, which I'm honestly
I
kind of
agree. I agree.
like, it makes no sense. If FIFA, you're saying you can host a tournament, why are you making them play in another country? Like Mexico should play in Mexico, US should play in the US, Canada should play in Canada. It doesn't make any sense to me that they should have to travel or go to a different country to play their games. But then going to Mexico, 3-0 against Czechia, it was close to start, but then Mexico just eventually just pulled away. I mean, it just towards the end of that game, they just absolutely took over. 55th minute, 61st minute, 90 plus four. Like second half was on Mexico. What were your thoughts on that game? Obviously, it's a good sign. They got Ochoa in the net. Obviously, he's playing his sixth World Cup, so that was great to see. What is Mexico's potential, chances to winning the World Cup? I mean, this is a really good group stage that they played really well. They won three games. They got 9 points, something a lot of teams weren't able to do. As a Mexico fan, are you hopeful that they could make a deep run here?
This is the thing that worries me when I looked at the bracket today. Um, According to the Athletic, there's a 71% chance that we play Ecuador in this round 32, and that's
Yeah,
the thing that worries me a lot. I don't want to play Ecuador. I would not, if I'm Mexico, I would not want to play Ecuador. Ecuador is a dark was we've always said Ecuador is a dark horse in this tournament, and they finally got it together against beating Germany yesterday. And if they get the draw, if they get to play Ecuador in the knockouts, they lose their home field advantage because Ecuador also has high altitude, just like Mexico. So they're used to that high. So they're used to the high altitude as well. So that home field advantage that all that advantages that Mexico had that we're supposed to have are now gone because Ecuador is used to those advantages that
yeah,
Mexico have. So I hope we don't get Ecuador, but I think it will. So that's where I'm very nervous about because I think Ecuador is a really good team, and if they fight after beating Germany, they got it together as I don't like my chance against Ecuador. I still I honestly do think we have a good shot against Ecuador, and I do think at the end of the day we do beat them because of the home field advantage. But if I'm Mexico, I'd be very worried if we get Ecuador. But as for the games in the group stage, I'm very happy with what my Mexico did. They played really well against Czechia. They finally got it together after what was a horrible first half. They looked lifeless in the first half. They didn't. They looked like they didn't try to create chances. They looked lost. They looked disorganized. They just looked awful in the first half. But
yeah,
after the second half, Czechia looked like a team that was desperate to go win for the game, and that's where the spaces opened up for Mexico to go on the counter and everything. And that's where Mexico finally got its goals. So I gotta give props to Mexico for what they did. And this is the thing also too. We talked about how the United States got it wrong with making 9 subs. This is the thing where I have to give props to Aguirre. He didn't make a lot of subs like Pochettino did. He still kept some starters in like Quinones, like Quinones. He kept Rangel. He kept some of
yeah,
their starters in because he knows how important those reps are heading into the
yeah,
knockout rounds. And also like and he put a Gilberto Mora that I honestly think he's young and he played really well and that boosted confidence is gonna help him a lot into the knockouts,
yeah,
who can actually be an X factor now against Ecuador if we get Ecuador in the end. So
yeah,
very happy with how Mexico turned out. And then also we got our moment with Ochoa. We were able to put him in. Like That was the best thing about Wednesday. We got to put Memo Ochoa in the moment where we didn't have anything to lose, and
Yeah,
I think I have to. And he put it in the Aguirre did it in the moment where it was perfect. He gave his goalie reps that he needed going to the knockout rounds, and he got and Ochoa got his goodbye moment. So a lot of props to Aguirre for getting everything right.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we get Ecuador, as a Mexico fan, I'd be very worried.
Look, I think I agree. I think Mexico did everything right in that game. I really liked how they handled it. I think they made a lot of good managerial decisions, and Mexico finished the group strong. Ecuador is a good team. I'm pretty sure before their loss against I forget who they played in their first group stage game.
Ivory Coast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that surprise loss, 1-0 loss way towards the end of that game. I'm pretty sure they were on like a 19 game unbeaten streak in terms of just they were getting draws, a ton of draws against
And
teams,
then
and
they tied
Ecuador
against
just
Curacao.
yeah. So again, like I think Ecuador, the one of those teams that's going to try and break you down, slow the game down. It's not going to be very high scoring for the most part with Ecuador. And I think it's going to be a challenge for Mexico, but obviously, I'm not as much of a fan of Mexico as you are, but I think Mexico is a good team. I think they win that game. Is it going to be easy? No. But honestly, watching Mexico is sort of an outsider, and it's just a soccer fan in general. I think Mexico it looks like one of the better teams in this tournament. They haven't had a letdown moment. Yeah, the first half against Czechia wasn't great, but
But
across the board, if you're comparing it to some of the other teams, Portugal's had their bad moments. Spain has had their bad moment. Mexico's looked pretty good. I mean, across all three games, no?
yeah, they have looked good, but this is the thing too. They've had their bad moments too as well. Like let's look at the South Africa game. Like yes they won 2-0, they won 2-0, but they played with 10 men for most of the second half, and they only got one
Yeah,
goal, and then they had 9 men,
yeah,
and then they had a 2-man advantage, and then they couldn't get on the front foot to get another goal, and then we got a red card.
yeah,
So we didn't take advantage of our chances of getting more goals in. So that's another thing we don't. That's another thing as a Mexico fan you can understand that we had our opportunities to create more chances and we didn't. And against Korea,
yeah.
we got very lucky because the goalkeeper like made a horrible mistake. Like that should have been not that game should have been a 0-0. So
That's
like
true.
so that's the thing. Like I understand we got 9 points. I mean, I'm very happy. Let me make it clear. Like we finally
Yeah,
we topped the group. We won all our games in the group stage for the first time in history. Like let me don't get me wrong. I'm very happy, but like there's a lot that Mexico can improve on still.
for
Like
sure,
we still
for
got to
sure.
create quality chances. Like
Yeah,
we still got to be better in the midfield because I think Eric Lira didn't play against Czechia, and we lost in the midfield for the first half. So that's a guy that is very important in the midfield. So like at the end of the day, like you have to, as a Mexico fan, like you have to understand that yes, we might have won the
yeah,
group and did everything right, but we still don't we shouldn't get our hopes up because we didn't play perfectly in the group stage. Like we still made a lot of
for
mistakes. We
sure,
didn't create quality
for
chances.
sure. Yeah,
And then at the end of the day we're gonna go up against the Ecuador team that has a lot of momentum and a lot of
yeah,
confidence. So
yeah.
like as a Mexico fan, like I'm very worried still.
Look, look. I think to say it was perfect is wrong, but again, to come away with all 9 points, there's 100% things to improve on. But I'm excited to watch Mexico play moving forward. I think they're a really good team, and I just want to see what they do. I think they're going to win a couple. I think at least one knockout stage game. We'll see how far they go.
I just hope it's not Ecuador because I really am
Yeah,
scared of Ecuador. I hope it's
trust me, we can tell.
Scotland. I hope it's Scotland or Uruguay because those are the two other
Yeah.
teams that we can get. But I hope it's
So
Scotland because Scotland looks lost. Scotland looks awful.
yeah. So you mentioned Uruguay. There's a couple really good games today. Norway, France is one of them. We'll start there. And Mbappe versus Holland, two guys who are trying to fight for this, Golden Boot race. Both have 4 goals. Both have played incredibly well this tournament. This is obviously Holland's first time in the World Cup. And Mbappe, arguably the greatest international player of all time already at this age. What are your expectations for this game? Holland came out and said, "Listen, we're going to lose to France, right? I mean, France is a better team. Like they're really good. Like I'm not going to be surprised if we don't get the result we want." Is this sort of just playing into the mindset like if we beat them, we got to pay attention to us, or do you really think France should win this game handily, and you're expecting a better performance from them, or do you think it should be close?
I think France is going to win this game. I mean, they're the best. They're one of the best teams in this World Cup. They have so much
Yeah,
depth, and it looks like they got it going. I do
yeah,
think not having the champs is a big loss, but I do think at the end of the day there's still a lot of depth on this team that the assistant coach can make a lot of changes, move pieces around. So I don't think it's big. I think it's. I still think France wins this game, but I do think what Holland said was very interesting. I think it was a lot of mind games, honestly,
I
because
agree. Yeah,
I honestly think that I think he's saying that to motivate Norway to say yes. I might have said that, but I think but we
yeah,
got to be motivated to beat a France team because this is the thing with Norway. We've said that they're a dark horse, and I think
yeah,
they've proven it. But if they beat France, I think we can consider them tournament favorites. I honestly do because you've beaten Iraq handily. You beat Senegal, who the AFCON champs, and now if you beat France, who are one of the tournament favorites. You can't deny the fact that they might be a tournament favorites because at the end of the day, they beat their teams they were expected, and they beat one of the best teams in all the World Cups. So
yeah,
if I'm Norway, like you have to go all in to win this game because you have a chance to make a huge statement to the world that you are for real. Because right now people see you as a dark horse, but people don't see Norway as a tournament favorite, and that's what they could do today. You can solidify, you can move your stats from
yeah,
dark horse to favorite, and that's what Norway has to do today. Because if they win, you have to consider them tournament favorites. But honestly, I think Holland could struggle today because the
yeah.
back line of France is a really good. Upamecano,
Way better.
Saliba,
Yeah,
Saliba is way better than the Senegal and Iraq backlines combined.
yeah,
So it's going to be a tough test for Holland today.
yeah,
And this is where Mbappe could easily score goals. And even
yeah.
I could even say as a joke that he could tie Messi today for the record. But
I wouldn't be
but today
surprised. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. But this is the thing, like I think today we're gonna learn about both teams a lot. And I think Holland, this is the first time we can see Holland be human because we're gonna see him play against a backline that's really, really good.
yeah,
And Mbappe will not slow down because he's going to play, in my opinion, a very weak Norwegian back line. I mean, they've let 3 goals already, and 2 of
yeah,
them against Senegal, in my opinion, were very sloppy.
yeah,
So honestly, we're in for a good matchup, but I honestly
yeah.
think France should win handily this game.
Yeah, I'm expecting. I think France needs to score 3 goals. Again, like you said, Norway's backline isn't that good. Mbappe, Dembele finally got his first major goal with France last game. Olise has been great. Mbappe, obviously, is Mbappe. No explanation needed. I'm expecting. Maybe I think if you take everything out of it, just look at the two teams. I think France is a game France should win like 3-1, right? I mean, this should be that sort of scoreline. Now, if Holland can somehow muster up a couple goals, that's going to change things. But like you said, France's backline is super strong. They're very technical, and Holland has not played a backline like this in any major tournament ever. So
Yeah.
this is going to be really interesting to see how Norway adjusts. And if Holland, again, I don't think you can carry the load against a team like France. We'll see. It's going to need all of his teammates to help out because, again, if they beat France, live in a hypothetical world. If they beat France, that's a wake up call. Again, you don't no longer are you trying to hunt. You're one of the hunted, right? You become one of the favorites in the tournament, and people look at you and think, okay, no, we have to prepare differently for Norway. This isn't just a Norway team we can sleep on just because they've never done anything. This Norway team just beat France, arguably the best team in the tournament. So I'm not expecting it, but if it happens, 100% one of the craziest results of the tournament, and it's going to shake up the entire landscape.
And then so you mentioned how like Holland might struggle to break down the France's back line. He needs to remember this is not Man City.
Yeah,
Norway does not have the playmakers that Man City has to give him the ball.
yeah,
And on Norway, he doesn't have a Cherky. He doesn't have a Bernardo Silva. He doesn't have Doku. He doesn't have those wingers that can give him the ball on Norway.
yeah,
So he's gonna have to create those chances on his own.
yeah.
So and I don't think honestly Holland might be the next great goal scorer in this generation, but I don't see him. I don't see him doing it against a team like France, where he needs to get the ball and create the chances on his own.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you're Norway, I think a draw would be great too. If you get a draw, and, let's say a 2-2 draw, 1-1 draw, you'll take that for sure. So I think
But
either
this is the
side.
thing. This is the thing for me. If I'm Norway, do you want to draw the game or go win it? Because if a draw doesn't set us, a draw still makes France still wins the group with a draw. So I have to think that like you have to go all
Well,
out to win the game.
No, I agree, but I think mentally, if you're Norway, if you get a draw, you probably think to yourself, okay, like that's a huge step in the right direction for us. Like that just proves to us that we can compete with a team like France. So I think like, yeah, you don't win the group and you obviously you want to win the group, but I think a draw for Norway, for them at least, feels like a win just because in your mind, yeah, you beat Senegal, but now you tied France. Like this is something you can build on, especially one of the knockout stage where you're gonna have to be better teams. I think just a draw mentally is 100 times better than if they lose today. So I think a draw or a win for Norway either way, they're going to be happy. But another game is
Yeah.
super interesting: Spain and Uruguay. Spain, obviously, I saw a crazy stat. They've only won 3 games since 2010 at the World Cup, which is when you think about it, with
Yeah.
all the talent they've had, is just unbelievable. But here's where the ramifications come in because if Spain loses and if Spain loses, they're playing Argentina. It's as simple as that in the round of 32. So that in itself is unbelievable. If Uruguay loses, then they'll be playing, or if Uruguay loses or draws, I believe they'll be playing Argentina. So either way, it should be a good game with Argentina. I think Argentina would much rather want to see Uruguay, who, if you look at their recent results, they're almost all draws. I don't know the last time they've had a win. A lot of the time they're just drawing these games. But Spain, Argentina, that would be unbelievable as a round of 32 match. So, what are
Yeah.
you expecting from the Spain Uruguay game? Are you expecting any surprises, or is Spain going to win and avoid that completely?
Oh, I think Spain's gonna win this game easily. Honestly, Uruguay has been very, very disappointing in this tournament. I mean, they couldn't beat Saudi Arabia, they couldn't even beat Cape Verde. I understand Cape Verde's been a Cinderella in the story, I get
Yeah,
it, but Uruguay has been very, very disappointing in this tournament. The fact that you couldn't beat those two teams is very embarrassing because you're Uruguay. Uruguay is supposed to be making noise at the World Cup all the time, and the fact that you
yeah,
couldn't beat a Saudi Arabia and a Cape Verde heading into the Spain game is very embarrassing because now it's a
yeah,
win. It's not you have to win to even have you have to win to just to make it out the group, because even a loss you're knocked out if you lose to Spain today. A tie maybe
yeah,
gets you in, but a loss and you're done. You're going home. And that's
yeah,
the thing. This is the thing. You could have avoided that scenario if you just beat Cape Verde and Saudi Arabia, and you didn't do that. Now you have to beat a Spain team that is has a
yeah,
lot of has a lot of momentum from beating Saudi Arabia, and then finally got its mojo going by scoring 4 goals. And Lamine Yamal looks better now, and he's probably going to play now all 90
yeah,
minutes because he got his goal, and now he played 45 minutes against Saudi Arabia, and now he's going to probably play 90. So he's getting better each day. So Uruguay, it's been very disappointing, and I think the right thing is that they don't make it out of the group because that Uruguay team is not good. Even if they make it to the knockouts, they're doomed to get eliminated in the round 32. Uruguay has been, I guess I'm gonna keep saying it, but I'll say it again. Uruguay has a lot. It's been very disappointing, and if they get eliminated, a lot of changes have to be made in the federation.
Oh no, I agree. But I think, look, for me as a soccer fan, like I would love to see Spain Argentina in round of 32. That's why I think if Spain lost today, that would make a very interesting match. Now let's just play into this. Let's say that happened and it was Spain Argentina round of 32. Who has the edge? Who has the edge in that matchup with two of the potential favorites in the tournament?
But for me, it still have to be Argentina because at the end of the day, like yes, yes, Spain is the European champs, but let's think about if that scenario happens, who is going into that game with much more confidence and more momentum? It's
Argentina.
Argentina. It's
Yeah,
Argentina. And what have we been talking about the entire time in this World Cup? It's about
yeah,
who is going into the games and the knockouts with more momentum, high
yeah,
confidence, and with players in their mojo. And
yeah,
that's the thing. If that scenario happens, who is the team that meets all that criteria? It's Argentina, not Spain.
yeah, yeah,
And let's not forget, Argentina is it's not Argentina, but they're almost pretty much on home soil because there are large Argentinians in this
for sure,
country who are gonna be rooting for Messi for Argentina. So
for sure.
at the end of the day, like if it's Argentina, Spain, like you're pretty much I think Spain's doomed because you're not gonna be high on confidence.
Yeah,
You're gonna pretty much play on away soil because there are large Argentinians in this country who are gonna be supporting Argentina. So
yeah.
for me, like I just gotta with Argentina just for all those reasons I've given you.
No, I agree. I mean, I think Argentina, especially if Spain's coming off a loss to get into this game, I think Argentina has a lot of the momentum. Last
And
game I
then
want to talk
also,
about.
and then
Oh, go
lastly,
ahead.
I'll say this. And then lastly, I'll say this. if you lose to Uruguay, you have like Spain has a lot of change to make because you cannot lose to a Uruguay team that just tied Cape Verde and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's fair. I completely agree. I completely agree. Last game I want to talk about happens tomorrow. Colombia and Portugal. That's going to be for the group. Again, highly anticipated. One of the best matches in the group stages. What are your thoughts on the game? Obviously, Portugal needs to win the group, and they'll end up in Argentina's quarter. If they lose or draw, then Portugal will very likely end up on the other half of the bracket, and they'll be in Spain's quarter, where they're expected to be, and they would have to play Spain in a hypothetical round of 16 match. So, how important is this game for both Portugal and Colombia, and who do you think is going to win it?
This is a very, very important game for both teams. I mean, there's a huge difference between the quadrants of the brackets. In one
Yeah,
quadrant, you have a lot of European champions, and on the other side, you pretty much just have Argentina and Brazil. So there's a huge difference between each
yeah,
quadrant. So, like for both teams, this is a huge game because your path to the final is going to be much more easier if you're on Argentina's side than on the France side. So
yeah,
this is a must win for both teams. Actually, even Colombia with a tie gets in as number one, as the first in the group. So
yeah,
for me, it's like must. For me, it's like you gotta make sure you gotta go all out to make sure you get the result you need to get to win the group. This will be a really, really fun game. Both teams have very contrasting styles. Colombia is a very physical team. They're gonna make sure they make things difficult for Portugal offensively. They're gonna try to out physical be up. They're gonna try to be out physical them. Um, and then France and then or Portugal, you just gotta keep them mojo from the Uzbekistan game. You gotta be sure you gotta make sure their midfield plays as well as they did against Uzbekistan.
yeah,
Ronaldo's gotta keep getting the ball. And then also like just if I were Roberto Martinez, keep the lineup as it is as it was against Uzbekistan. Like you don't make any changes. Like keep the rhythm going.
yeah,
Going into the Colombia game, like don't mess it up. So for me, like Portugal has to go all out to win this game, and they got to make sure to keep the same starting lineup because that lineup worked, and you got to keep that same lineup going. You got to keep that same mojo and rhythm going into the Colombia game. But honestly, I still think Portugal wins this game because honestly, yes, Colombia might have beat Uzbekistan and Congo, but you watch that Congo game. Colombia did not play well. They got very lucky to get come away with that win. So, and
yeah,
then and then Portugal just ran Uzbekistan out of the stadium. So
yeah.
I honestly think I have to give the edge to Portugal right now.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a great game. 7:30. It's a good time. Everyone's gonna be,
Hmm.
and tomorrow's Saturday anyway, so no one's gonna be at work. But it's just it feels like a nighttime game, and it feels like it's gonna be a really good game between two really good teams. And again, like you said, the Argentina quadrant is very, very light. And so if you can get there, Argentina is going to be the only team you really have to beat to get to the semis, right? I mean, that's essentially what it is. So look, I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be a 2-1 game. I want to see Portugal's going to win, but again, depends on how Portugal plays, right? Are you going to advance the ball? Are you going to get the ball to dangerous spots on the field? Or are you going to be passive? Are you going to control the possession? Are you going to be okay with just taking control of the whole game? Because Colombia, again, like you said, they're going to be physical. They're going to want to win the ball. So again, the pressure is going to be on Portugal to make it happen. And again, can you get the ball to Cristiano Ronaldo? Can you play around him successfully? And I wouldn't change the lineup either. I think Neto played well. I think Leao needs to come in again, sort of the same sort of substitutions he did. Have bring Sawa in the second half. My question is the defense. I'm worried about the defense. I don't really trust the back line. Yeah, Ruben Diaz, great. Nuno Mendes is good. Cancelo is, not the same as he used to be, but he's still pretty good. But then I'm really concerned with that second center back spot with I think they started Vega last game. I don't
Yeah, I
love
think it's their big.
he he
Yeah,
he turns the ball over at some bad spots. I mean, I just that's the one spot where I'm nervous.
yeah. For me, like with Portugal, like and you were right about the back line. Ever since Pepe retired, they haven't been able to find a replacement for him.
Yeah,
So like that's been the problem with Portugal as well. Like they haven't been able to find Pepe's replacement, and that's where they're vulnerable at.
yeah, and I would start if I was Roberto Martinez, I would start Ignacio before I start Vega. I just from what I've seen with Vega, yeah, he's played both games. He just looks a little bit, on his feet, looks a little slow, makes some bad choices. Sometimes he passes backwards in bad moments, and he puts the ball in unnecessary pressure. So I'm just interested to see how Roberto Martinez handles it. Before
And
we
then
leave,
and
oh, go ahead.
And then Ruben Diaz is not a fast guy. So he could easily
No,
get he could
no.
easily get if a fast guy like Luis Diaz could easily beat him on the run. So
For sure.
like I said, I think you've said it best. I think the back line is another thing that I would worry about Portugal. So yeah, this
Yeah.
will be a fun game to watch.
100%. And I'm looking forward to it. We're going to end with the trivia question of the day on Keene on
Oh, again.
Sports. All right, Fernando. This is the World Cup question. All right, here
All
we
right.
go.
All right.
Which country is the only one to have participated in every single FIFA World Cup tournament? Take a
Oh,
couple seconds here, think about it, or if you don't need any
no,
seconds,
no, 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 no,
listen.
no. I already know the answer.
All right, listen real quick. Let me know in the comments if you know the answer. You can pause. You can pause the video here. Don't let Fernando give it away for you. Fernando, what is the correct answer?
Brazil.
Ding, 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 ding. Yes, Brazil is the only country to have participated in every FIFA World Cup tournament, which is honestly quite phenomenal when you think about it, and all the different countries that have won. And to be to everyone shows some consistency. So, I guess my last question to you before we leave is: Does Brazil win the tournament this year?
No, no. They do get
Okay.
past. They do get past Japan, and
Yeah.
I do think they'll get past Ivory Coast, or I will probably be Norway.
Yeah.
But I think their road ends for them in the quarterfinals. Because
I
I
agree.
honestly don't think because I honestly don't think I don't, honestly still don't think that Brazil team is a really good team.
Yeah, I don't think Brazil gets it done this year. Good team. Yeah, Neymar story's great, but I don't think they get it done. But anyways, I want to thank you all for joining us on Keen on Sports today. Another great edition. Fernando, thank you for joining us. Enjoy the World Cup. Enjoy the NBA offseason. Lots of drama, lots of good stuff to watch on TV. We'll be back this weekend. We'll talk about the knockout stage. And look forward to seeing Fernando back on the show. And please like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, follow me on X, on Instagram, all the good stuff. Fernando, thanks for joining us.
Of course, have a good one.
You too.